You know, you're hearing us all, and it's so great for us to be here and be able to vent to people that live this every single day. And I know in your hearts and your mind, you're saying they're here. What are they going to do? We're on your side, and it's like this is almost like us just talking to each other, and it's so great. You have a great sheriff here. It was mentioned earlier. You know, our law enforcement. It's so refreshing across the country, and I want you to know that he's backed by county sheriffs across this nation. I just had a roundtable this past week in my district back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and this same narrative it's everywhere. Congressman, what are we going to do about the southern border? We have fentanyl issues. It's killing our people, and it's a travesty. We got human trafficking. Homeland Investigation Services are just turning people loose. They're not letting us arrest people, and so this, unfortunately, Mr. Bolts, I think you said this earlier, it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but it is, and it's sad. It's not a partisan issue to go through that pre-check line at the airport and make sure there's not criminals when you're sitting beside somebody, but you all every single day are living the same kind of threat in your towns, your communities, your homes. Many of us up here have been to the southern border numerous times. In Texas, it gets the most highlight, but as the CBP chief said a minute ago, we're 7 times, 8 times worse than that any place on the Texas border. It's a travesty what's gone on across this nation's southern border, a travesty. You know, we saw an article, and I think more and more people, I think we can thank Governor Abbott for what he has done to send or allow people to leave Texas and go to these sanctuary cities, because now you have our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that are putting pressure on this. And in Washington, D.C., there's nothing more impactful than politics. And the president knows that there's a real problem now, and he's trying to figure out how to do it. And you heard my colleagues talk about the 8 items out there. I would love, Sheriff, or anybody up here, if of those 8 items, which would have the biggest impact on the invasion across our southern border. And before you answer that, I just want to say one thing. If you haven't seen how the people now are starting to report this, if you saw 60 Minutes on Sunday night talk about what was happening 60 miles east of San Diego, where TikTok was instructing people around the world on how to come to this particular point, something as similar as the end of the wall that we just saw out here just a minute ago, just droves of them. And Chinese, and CBS 60 Minutes reported there were 600 Chinese illegal immigrants came across that one hole in the wall in a 3-day period. And TikTok instructed them how to do that, how to bring them 7,000 miles away. So, Sheriff, you could talk to us about the 8 items, which one of those that the president could implement quickly and what impact it would have.
Well, the biggest thing I would say is this, and I've said this for the last several years, is you got to acknowledge there's a problem. And we just finally heard that several weeks ago from President Biden that the border is not secured. We have the vice president, the border czar, that has not engaged with the border communities, mayors, sheriffs, and beyond. So he's acknowledged it. Now let's prioritize it. Let's engage our community leaders to get to the table, and we can fix it. At the beginning of the day, it wakes up with community. At the end of the day, we go to bed with communities. But the more you neglect communities, the worse this is going to get. And then you prioritize and enforce the rule of law. And I got to say one last thing I think is so important that Secretary Mayorkas and I spoke about 3 years ago. I said we have to have enhanced judicial oversight on credible fear asylum claims, because right now they're exploiting it. He said, I 100% agree with you, Sheriff. That was 3 years ago. We're nowhere different than we were 3 years ago. I'll leave it at that.
If you saw what the president said today, which proves what my colleagues have said, nothing has changed since President Trump was in office. The only thing that's changed is that President Biden has undone all the things that President Trump did that started slowing the crossings of the border. He said today that since Congress can't do something, I guess I'm going to have to implement executive orders. So he's known all along that he's had the ability to do this, and that they've been discussing this for months. And there have been people dying across this country because of illegal fentanyl flowing, and you all have been suffering. So I just want you to know those are the facts. And he was the one who put that out today, that he was going to have to do executive orders. I yield back.